Hey everybody, I'm Barney Taylor and welcome back to In the Record Room, the show for all things vinyl and all things soul. And I am so excited this afternoon. I'm joined by, hot press have called her the First Lady of Irish House. It's Aoife Nic Canna. Aoife, welcome to In the Record Room. Aoife, as everybody will know, is a DJ, a collector and an archivist. And I'm thrilled that you've come on the show.
Thank you, Barney. Great to be here. Welcome to my record room.
It's a bit more impressive than mine. Mine is all over the house at the moment. So I line up some important records that are important to me.
Well, mine are in a jocker, me looking for my 3 tracks for you.
Well, that's part of the difficulty of this, because I can see, and I have seen from your live streams, that you have a lifetime of vinyl surrounding you. So
yeah,
choosing 3 records from that must have been unendurable.
Yeah, it's not picking the records, because I get asked that a lot.
Yeah.
And I never pick the same 3 records or the same 5 records or 10 records, because I change my mind, and it's how you're feeling. And you know, regarding yourself, you asked for soul, so I had soul in mind. You know what I mean? Someone might ask me about an 80s record or a house record or that. So it wasn't that. It's just you want the record, but you just can't find them. I never hear record collectors giving it out about how hard. Sometimes you can spend 24 hours looking for a record, you know, and you have your mind set on it, and it's like, no, this is the tune, this is the tune, this is the tune I need for this, you know. So yeah. But I found it, of course.
I think
sometimes when you kind of go past them, you've already checked, but you've missed it. You know, it might be a black one or a white one, you know.
Yeah. But that's the thrill of collecting, though, isn't it? That you're surrounded by these objects, and part of the thrill of owning them is forgetting what you had, or looking for something and then it becoming a small journey to find it amongst all of the other things. I mean, I think that's all part of this story that I'm kind of hearing from episode to episode from collectors like yourself. So you probably know where we're going to start with this. Aoife, I'm just going to ask you to tell me how you started, or where your vinyl journey started. How did you start?
Sure. I suppose, I was born in 71, so I would have been 10 in 81. So really, you know, when I started to be a teenager, I started buying records. In 81 was like the start of an amazing decade with music, which was 80s. Which is, you know, still has a huge, huge influence on me. So yeah, I started buying records then. I was definitely a record collector from the beginning. I did really enjoy. I want to have them songs to play.
Yeah.
I was also a big mixtape girl too. I just loved making mixtapes too. So it was a natural progression, I think, for me to become a DJ eventually.
Now, the thing about mixtapes is, I know I am going to have to start doing some shows about mixtapes, because they are just so central to people's lives. Although occasionally you see photos on Facebook of a TDK90, and people are often sort of going, oh, if you remember these, you're too old now, and those kind of things. But it was crucial, I think, wasn't it, for the transmission of songs, for people to share tapes?
Yeah, and I mean, it's like, even as a DJ today, I think what's very important, you're collecting the music and you're putting the songs together, but you're also, it's your flow, and it's what songs go on, what song goes better before this, and what song goes after this. I've often made a mixed tape, or a mixed, a mix, and the mixing is good. I'm happy with the mixing, but I don't like that song before the other song. So I'll have to start all over again. So I definitely think of flow, like, you know, you have to warm up. You know, so I definitely think the flow of how one song, sometimes I get a new song and it's so good and I'm like, what the hell am I going to play before and after that?
Yeah.
So that is important too, you know. It's like what songs complement them.
Absolutely. And I think, obviously, because I've been doing my research. You have played everywhere. You have played the Hacienda, you have played festivals, you have had residencies in Dublin and other places as well, including 8 years, I believe, at RERA, which is...
Yes. Re-Rod definitely had a huge influence with my my music style, especially going from, you know, a record collector to a DJ, because Re-Rod was a funk club too. So there was these wonderful DJs like Claire Maloney and Aaron McMahon, you know, and they were playing Bela Kuti and Galliano, and also I got introduced to other music other than dance music in Re-Raw. So it really was like, I used to go to Funk Off in Galway, which was a really big night in Galway in the late 80s, maybe early 90s, and then that got brought to Dublin, which became one of a really successful night in Dublin. So Owen Foyle, the guy who owned Re-Raw, you know, he wanted his own funk club. So as a house DJ to get in there, you know, was really, really good.
It's I think, and that's really interesting, and it's something that I'm hoping we can talk a bit more about. My experience of the soul scene is that it used to be quite labeled quite traditionally. So you would have modern, you would have northern, you would have all of these kind of things. One of the things I've understood since I've been promoting the D8 Soul Club is a lot of these boundaries are porous at best, and in many places don't exist. So when you're talking about something like house music, there are so many variations in there anyway. We always hear people talking about funky house or gospel house or these kind of things. To my mind, it's dance music, and it's kind of, the flow can be important, because can you move through from disco to house to funk and all of those things? I think the answer is yes, because
absolutely,
it's how it works.
I mean, I don't think Owen Foyle from Re-Raw, for instance, really had much time for house music, because, you know, he related it to the rave scene, but he also wanted it in his club, but he wanted the house he liked. And I think that's why he got me, which would go back to, I used to have the full soulful vocals.
Yes.
You know, and I was like, it was quite funky, it was jazzy, so it was house music that he understood.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
I think also a lot of these distinctions aren't important to people when they're on the dance floor. They're more interested in what you're describing as the flow. They want to stay on the floor. You want to keep them on the floor. Nobody is really sitting there going, oh, well, hang on, that's a jazz house thing. No, I much prefer. People don't tend to operate that way. So a lot of these labels are for collectors, or are for, I always liken it to collecting, world cinema. For a lot of people, world cinema is just a marketing label. So you can have films from Argentina or films from Brazil, because surely it's just cinema. And so it was just the distinctions you would have when you went into HMV. There were the Irish films, there were the Hollywood films, and then was the world cinema. So when we're talking about dance floors, and I mean, essentially your job is to keep a dance floor full. So you're going to do everything you possibly can to do that. And that is going to necessarily involve you embracing as wide a range of music as possible, as long as it serves the purpose, which is to keep people dancing, I guess.
Yeah, as long as you like it as well. I mean, which would have been like 92, 93 time, but in 95 I became hip hop R&B as well. But I used to get really frustrated because I couldn't find the songs to go from a hip hop set to a house set.
Yeah.
It used to really, like, I can do it now, but it really was like funk music or the faster stuff. Like I could put Brand New Heavies or Soul to Soul or, you know, those type of bands in between the hip hop and the house. And again, playing in Re-Raw did really help me, because I was around these wonderful DJs that were playing a lot of funk and soul and acid jazz and stuff like that, you know. So they kind of inspired me to find that kind of middle ground, you know. I always like to think I'm a house DJ and I'm a hip hop DJ and I have no time for these mixed bag DJs. But I really am a mixed bag DJ as well, you know what I mean? I really do. You know, like, especially with hip hop, it comes in so many different styles and tempos.
Yeah.
And even house music, you know, like, it goes through phases. Like, you know, sometimes the snares are really short and sometimes they're long. And sometimes like a lot of the old house I have is 125 BPM, but if you buy a new house, it's kind of 110 and 115. It's gone slow, just like techno has too.
Yeah.
So we go through phases.
Yeah.
So I've often said, oh yeah, that's my old house. Like when I'm playing at the moment, I'll go, oh, that's the old house records. So they won't mix in with the new house records. And people have said to me, oh, but house is house. How can you say that? And I'm going, because they don't mix in. They don't mix together. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. So it does vary.
It varies, absolutely. I think that's a great opportunity to go back and ask you, how did you get into house? Because clearly this is central to your journey as a DJ, house music. So what got you into that? Where did it begin for you?
Well, definitely London in 1989. Like I'm actually from Dublin, but I did actually live in Limerick while I was a teenager. So my mother's from Limerick, my father's from Dublin. So when I was in Limerick, like I was really lucky, you know, I was an alternative kid and just fell in with another beautiful group of people who were also those alternative kids. And we would have been listening to a lot of Soft Cell, Cocteau Twins. You know, the way when you meet people that are into the same music
Yeah.
as you, you're like, you know, that's really important, you know.
Yes.
But it was
Yeah.
also a very small kind of, there wasn't many people listening to alternative music.
Yeah.
And by the end of the 80s and that decade, you know, and it was a really tough decade as well, the indie dance started to happen.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like we were starting to get these dancey records, you know, like and as well as that, you know, even we used to go to Galway a lot and we used to hear reggae DJs and, you know, going to funk off and listening to funk and other music that was kind of more upbeat and happier than the dark stuff. We had the dark wonderful stuff like Da Da and Soft Cell, listening to that kind of music. But it was just very refreshing to hear some funk and soul and hip hop and stuff like that, which eventually would have become, you know, the more and more we listened to it, the more house we start. Like I just started buying house records through that, you know. I was promoting for a while in Limerick, and I just remember paying these guys stupid money, and they weren't playing the music that I really wanted in my very cool club.
Yeah.
So that's really, you know, it was 93 I moved back to Dublin.
Right.
It was even different then, because they were like, there's a girl from down the country and she's got tons of house records, you know. It was a bit like that.
Yeah.
So I kind of got into DJing kind of I was done with promoting. I never really wanted to do it again. I still don't, you know, unless I have to. But it was kind of through that I think people just presumed I was a DJ, but I wasn't. I just had tons and tons of dance music. But as well as that, it was that contrast still. So like the first gig I did was a thing called Chickalita in Fibber McGee's.
Right.
And that was run by UCD and Trinity. So it was like a student club.
Okay.
So it was like, you know, that wonderful indie music that you have, will you play that for us? And, you know, if you're really good, we let you play the dance music at the end. And then it was true that, like, they were saying there's a girl down Fibber McGee's and she's playing house music, because there was only two or three house clubs in Dublin at the time. So I was that's how I kind of fell into it. And then obviously I was getting booked to do house.
Yeah.
So that was how it happened. Yeah.
It's fascinating. I mean, I remember I grew up in a small town on the south coast of England, and it was very, very tribal in the way you're describing. There were the goths and the scooter boys and all of these other people. Then we had soccer casuals as well. But I remember house, I suppose, coming to Hastings. We had a pier. So eventually the Renaissance nights and things like that used to come down to Hastings. And John Digweed was one of Hastings' most famous graduates as a DJ. But I remember going to these, one of the first all-nighters. I think in my mind, it was 87 or 88. I can't really remember. But the first time I went, everybody was still there in their tribal stuff. And then the next time we all went, everybody had kind of shed that and had kind of formed a new alliance with this kind of music. And it's not that I stopped listening to soul or things like that, but we all just became fascinated by all of this music. I remember people like Fabio and Groove Rider and those kind of people playing at the start, and it was the whole experience. And I'm assuming that that was an experience I was having on the south coast of England in the late 80s, early 90s. I'm assuming it was the same in Dublin, that there was a
It was.
big, big scene.
It was the same. It was the same all over the country. I think I was very lucky being a Dub,
Yeah,
living in Limerick. When you were in Limerick, you didn't really go to Dublin. We used to go to Cork and we used to go to Galway, but we
yeah,
didn't really go to Dublin. Except for me, I used to go and see my dad.
yeah,
But I think what's really important, if you go back to that time in Ireland, and obviously we didn't have the internet,
yeah,
was how close to the UK we were. We
yeah,
were really, really close, and how influenced we were.
yeah,
And that literally was the amount of people that emigrated, the amount of young people that emigrated over there to work, because
yeah,
there was no work there, you know. So
yeah,
yeah, we dressed like them, we collected records like them, we'd go over and we'd be part of those squat parties
yeah,
and all that type of thing going on. I know what you mean as well with that contrast, because I often use the word techno hippie, because my brothers were a bit younger, you
yeah,
know, and they were into hip hop and skateboarding and stuff like that, and they
yeah,
used to call us techno hippies. So we were like the ones that were the indie kids
yeah,
that got into raving. And I even remember, like, not me, but like there was like in Limerick in the late 80s, there was just a lot of secondhand clothes and a lot of long hair, and it was
yeah,
very scruffy. And then all of a sudden, like, they all started cutting their hair and buying a pair of trainers and getting kind of more clean cut and
yeah,
neater and stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah,
And I remember, for me, I still love black clothes. I still wear black clothes all the time. But I remember kind of, you know, after that whole, my first rave experience,
yeah,
kind of going, oh, I could wear a pink denim jacket. Oh, I've got turquoise shoes. Oh, I've got purple too. It was the color, you know,
yeah,
it was like, it was very colorful, you know.
yeah,
The
yeah,
music was more colorful, and obviously our image, and we had changed, you know.
yeah.
So it was, I suppose it was a very special time,
Yeah, no,
you
I
know,
mean,
that
my
kind of
memory is the
contrast.
same as yours in terms of the colors. And suddenly everyone was wearing dyed jeans and this kind of stuff, and
Yes.
lots of
Yeah.
trainers and bits and pieces. And then I remember FBI wind cheaters were a thing for a little while, and all of these bizarre things. I mean, and it was a fascinating time though, and because I had grown up as a mod, and so I'd grown up listening to kind of the Kent albums and stuff. And then we all used to get in our cars and drive off looking for these little events all around the country, or we'd go up to clubs in London. And it has taken me to come back to the kind of the soul scene to really understand that actually house was everywhere and was almost everything for loads and loads of people. And it's not that you ignored what you had listened to previously. You just found new sounds, I think. I mean, that's my memory of it. I just remember it being,
Yeah. I think particularly with the mod and the soul scene, like, I saw your interview with Paul Mulholland,
yeah,
and you know, you can have wonderful conversations with him about house music, you know,
yeah,
even though he has that background.
yeah,
But he's an amazing house DJ, and one of my earliest memories as well in Dublin in the 90s was sharing a residency with Flavo,
yeah,
Eamon Flavin, who
yeah,
runs Reverb Cool,
yeah,
you know. But I just remember how good he was, you know, and obviously he had come from that mod scene
yeah,
and he just
yeah,
really knew his soul music, you know, which was really refreshing for someone like me, because I didn't have that soul background.
yeah,
But it was almost like the next thing, the next way to go to. It wasn't that they were turning their back on their music, it
no.
was just that their music had broadened, I suppose, you know. And they totally got house music, of course they did, why wouldn't they, you know.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I mean, Flavo's played at D8 a few times and always fills the floor. I mean, he's a man with an amazing collection. But you're absolutely right. If you have a passion and if you collect, then you're forever looking for new expressions of that passion. You're always looking for
Mhm.
new avenues to explore, because we don't just buy 10 songs and say, right, that's it, never going to listen to anything else. And so I can understand. I mean, you know, when one of the things that I have come to understand speaking to so many people is everybody is curious. We're always looking for another record, a new sound. We're always looking for the record to play next after the one we've chosen, going back to your idea about flow. Or we've got this new record and then we're not sure where it goes because perhaps and you need environments where they're open to you playing records, I guess, as well. And with your experience, I mean, one of the things I was going to ask you about is your relationship with dance floors. In D8,
Yes.
for example, everybody knows most people there. It's a very open, the soul scene is very open to new sounds. And I'm assuming that's the same in your experience as well, that people are looking to you to play things they may not know.
Yeah, I mean, I've had this conversation a good few times before as well, is that, you know, at the start of the night when people are coming in and they're
Yeah.
having a drink, and sometimes you will have the promoter or the owner going, there's no one dancing yet. And I'm like, no, it's fine. Let them be. They're not drunk yet. They're not,
Yeah.
they're just getting, they're hanging out with their friends. They're getting their drinks. They're getting settled in. And I'm warming up. I don't want you to dance yet. I want you to dance when you're ready.
Yeah.
But you might be grooving a little bit and
Yeah.
kind of go, okay, I'm feeling this. It's not too loud. We can still have our chats. We can
Yeah.
still have our drinks and our catch up. That's just as important
Yeah.
as, you know, like that's for me, like, you're going to stay because I want you to dance in a while.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's really, really important to me. There's some dance floors as well like that, you know, like I play in the liquor rooms. Well, I used to, God knows what's happening there, but like that used to be the kitchen, you know, and I don't know, there's something about that dance floor. It just brings out the best in me, you know.
Yeah.
You know, what you call, it's almost like the feng shui in a room. The dance floor is in the belly of the building. It's in the right place.
Yeah.
Sometimes the dance floor isn't in the right place in
Yeah.
the building, but I don't care anyway. I'll make you
Yeah.
dance. But
Yeah.
sometimes it's just right. It's in the right place, you know. And I don't care what venue it is or who owns it.
Yeah.
Because it's my dance floor. Like,
Yeah.
because I like let's say the liquor rooms, you know, I've worked for these guys for years and they're great. But it's like, you don't understand that this is where it all began for me, which was the kitchen. This is where this was U2's club, and
Yeah.
like it really started off for me, you know. So
Yeah.
it's I can't tell you how good it is to have it full, you know, full on a Saturday night and people are still dancing on my dance floor, you know. So
But
that's,
yeah, Aoife, that's just a beautiful kind of evocation of, I suppose, your journey in many ways, where you started, where you still are, but what it means to you emotionally and how it's in your heart as much as anything else. And then that comes back out in what you play. Because obviously, when you are feeling like you are where you want to be, then that expression of love comes out in your choices as well, doesn't it? And it allows you to,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, you know, I hear this whole record collector thing, and obviously I am a record collector, and that's how I became a DJ. But I really am a DJ before I'm a record collector now,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
So it's like, even, you know, the Beat Lounge, the club I do in Berlin bar, you know, that is, I always warm up with hip hop, and it turns into a house. It turns into a banging house night because it really suits that venue.
yeah,
But there's sometimes I just might go, oh no, do you know what? I think I'll go back to the hip hop. I'm feeling hip hop now.
mm,
And I play a hip hop track and I'm going, they're having none of it. They're having none of this. So I will go back to house. Do you know what I mean? It's okay to clear the dance floor. It's okay to try. It's okay to push boundaries, do you know?
yeah, yeah.
So then there might be another time I'm going, oh, I'm feeling speed garage. I feel like playing some UK garage. I only have 3 songs with me, but will I try it? You know,
Yeah,
and it
yeah,
does work. So it is about pushing those boundaries. And it isn't, you know, it's like people not to expect the same.
yeah,
And if it doesn't work, it's okay, because I'll bring it back. Like, I am one of those people that can't, like, I have to make people dance. You
yeah,
know, it's not,
yeah.
you know, that's my job. That's what I do. That's what I do. That's why
Well,
I'm
that's
still doing.
exactly, that's why you're standing there in front of all of those people. But the beauty of this is as well, is that what you're actually describing is passion. And if we see passion in anybody, in any walk of life, we find it inspiring and we are motivated by these people. So when you're obviously passionate about the records you're playing, you can transmit that passion, I think, and people see you dancing or people see the effort you're putting in. And I think that's how dance floors evolve as well, because people come on a journey with you. You care so
Absolutely.
much that you're going to bring everybody with you. And I think that's when it doesn't always work, as you described. Sometimes people
Yeah.
aren't up for it, but I think, go on.
Yeah, the only thing I will say, and I'm going back to the 90s again, and
Absolutely.
with Donald and Ian, like we both were more inexperienced
Yeah.
DJs at the time, and I
Yeah.
remember Donald, I was upstairs and he was downstairs on a Wednesday, and I remember going down to him, and he said to me, he said, "Oh, if it starts bad, it'll go bad for the whole night." And I was like, I know. Well, that's complete and utter bullshit. If it starts bad,
Mm.
it's like, okay, how do I turn this shit around, and how do I turn it around fast? It's
Yeah.
about, like, I don't have bad nights, do you know?
Well, no, go on.
No, I just mean I don't have bad nights, even if there's a technical problem, or even if there's some, even if it isn't going well. It's all about, okay, right, let's fix this. Let's
Yeah.
fix it now. And you can.
Yeah.
But if you're going, oh, it's going bad, it's going to stay bad, it's going to, so you've kind of given up, there's no giving up. It's like, okay, it's starting off a bit funny. They're not feeling this hip hop. Let's go to house. Let's turn it around.
Every DJ has a go-to record, which is if in danger of empty dance floor, break glass and throw on. There's always something that you can put on that is going to retrieve the situation. This sounds like maybe this could be a good opportunity for me to start asking you about some of the records you've chosen. I want to hear more about playing live and things like this. And I understand there's a documentary you made in 2012 that I'd like us to chat about. But before that, perhaps we might talk a little bit about the records you've chosen, because one of the stories that's so lovely about this is actually just getting people to hold them and say what they mean. So what's the first record you've chosen, Aoife?
Mary J,
Ah,
the queen of hip
now.
hop soul. But I have to show you the back of it.
That's lived a life, hasn't it?
That's why I'm a DJ. I'm not a record collector anymore. Like it.
Is that from
I had to
stuffing it
sell
into
it places.
boxes?
This was the one I couldn't find either. This was one of the ones I couldn't find, but I found it. So I picked, you did ask for soul, so when you ask me about soul, I'm thinking of hip hop soul.
Yeah.
My brothers, who are younger, by the way, we have family in Philadelphia, so they definitely influenced my middle brother in particular. So they've always been true hip hop fans, so there had, like, from those early days, when I was the techno hippie, and they always, I'd always go, I like that hip hop, but I don't like the rap. I
Yeah.
don't like the rap. And I was going, and at this stage, I was playing stuff like Soul to Soul and New Colors and
Yeah.
De-Influence and all those kind of UK kind of
Yeah.
soul bands and that.
Yeah.
And I was going, like even the Brand New Heavies and stuff. And I was going, God, like, if only I could get that hip hop without the rap,
Yeah.
because as well as that, like, it was kind of degrading and, you know what I mean, not
Yeah, at
cool
the
for me to
time it
play.
wasn't very enlightened, a lot of it, was it? It was
Yeah, and I was from Jazz FM as well, and
yeah.
we were, like, a lot of kids were listening to that
Yeah.
radio station, and the parents will be ringing up going, look, just no hip hop, none of
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
rap stuff, so that's how early it was.
Yeah.
But I was already kind of an established house DJ in Dublin, which was a lot easier because there weren't many DJs or there weren't many clubs. So
Yeah.
MCAU started sending me awful records, really, to be honest with you, terrible records. But I started getting this and Joe Desi, a woman called Chrissy Arrington, just start all this kind of slow, it was a hip hop beat
Yeah.
with a full vocal,
Yeah.
beautiful soul vocal on top.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very raw, and then again it was just so well produced.
Yeah.
I actually couldn't mix it. I was just learning how to mix house, and then it was like, how the to mix this. It was really, really hard to learn how to mix hip hop. Thankfully, a acid jazz DJ said to me, Aoife, you mix it on the second beat. And I was like, what? And he said, the snare. You see, the snare is nice and long, and then you just flick it over. And with the house, you mix on the first beat. And that was the best lesson I ever could have got, like, was just learning how to. But there was no such word as R&B either, you know. Like, I literally had 3 records, and I was playing in the Temple of Sound. I had just started playing with another hip hop DJ called Glenn Brady, and I said, what if I warm up with this music? And he was like, what music? And I was getting a Jeanne record out and the Kenny Dope record. I said, like, I think they mix, and it would be nice before your hip hop set. And he used to go hip hop to breakbeat, and then I do house.
Yeah.
And he was like, God, that's great music. What is it? And I was like, it's called swing beat. It's the new music that's out at the moment. So I always called it my swing beat sets, and I called it swing beat for years. It was just, afterwards it got a name called R&B. And I even remember saying to Owen Foyle in Reraw, like, I was doing the house sets, and I was like upstairs, could I do something different? And he was like what? And I said, it's called R&B. And he's like, rhythm and blues. And I was like the 70s music. And I was like, no, it's just hip hop with no rap. So this was really where it all began for me. And this is Natural Woman, which isn't, you know, that's an old song, but Be Happy is on it, Puff Daddy. But there's also a track called Mary's Joint. So I would have played 3 of these songs because I didn't have enough songs. Yeah. But Mary's Joint is actually just a hip hop beat made by Sean Combs when he was really good. Puff Daddy, P. Diddy. And it was a beat, and then it just had this beautiful vocal on top of it. It's very, still to this day, even when I play house music, it's when it's minimal, when there's not much going on, but there has this groove. But her voice was so good; she can carry the whole song. And you know, a lot of these girls were singing in churches and stuff, all their lives. You know, so like they. Singing this music was like, you know, so such a good way of bringing it on, or I suppose playing the modern music that they wanted to.
It's one of the great stories, isn't it? The story of the human voice and how it finds certain grooves. And I was watching a documentary recently about Aretha Franklin, and that there are moments in her career where her voice meets a sound and the two combine and they go beyond. But your description of this this record, and more importantly what you felt you wanted to do with it, were you able to then move in the direction you wanted to and play more stuff? Did you start collecting records?
Because they just started making them records. Now I'm talking maybe 1 or 2 a month, but then, you know, I had Misha Paris, and I had like Beverly Knight was coming out, so I was able to mix that street soul, that UK soul with R&B or swing beat. So and obviously then, you know, I had this new niche, you know, so, and as well as that, some of the hip hop records were brilliant too, you know, and they would have choruses with, you know, Mary J or Faith Evans or all these other wonderful R&B stars were coming out. So it really was, these few records from MCA really were the beginning of R&B, like Jodeci and stuff like that as well, you know. So.
And how did your dance floors react? Did they go with you?
Oh, no one danced to it. They hated it. It was awful. Like I see a quote from me from years and years ago on a magazine going, R&B is too slow and sexual for Irish people. But even then, you know, like playing full vocals as a house DJ, you know, like there was that contrast between rave and house. Do you know what I mean? So it wasn't bang, 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 you know what I mean? It was like full vocal house, but it was house music. It was like Frankie Knuckles and things like that. So but no one danced to it. Like, I mean, it was a decade later before, like, I had Destiny's Child's records, and I was like, God, this is weird. Me, like, you know, because it was Timberland, Missy Elliott were making their
Yeah.
records, and I was like, this is like slow drum and bass. This is really weird music. I thought it
Yeah.
was underground. I didn't know like that Beyonce was going to become like as big as she is. Do you know what I mean? I never realized how important like R&B basically became pop music.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
It's
know,
interesting, I
so I had no
suppose.
idea. No one danced to it. No.
No, do people dance to it now? This is my question. Like,
Oh,
has it kind of come back round? Because at the time, maybe you were 5 years ahead of your own dance floor.
oh, I'd say a decade. It took a while. Well, it was 95. Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, you're right. You are right. 5 years. Then all the, you know, like it had a name. You know, it got poppy, and like there was, I'd be buying R&B records every week. They were
Yeah,
just coming out all the time. You just
yeah,
couldn't get enough of them. And they were, these guys were like producing this amazing stuff all the time. So, and then the hip hop as well. Also, you know, had to have a female singer in it too. Do you know what I mean? So a lot of the hip hop became soulful as well.
yeah. No, I'm just curious because obviously the sort of people that I see at the sort of places that I go to aren't necessarily looking for the latest thing. They're looking for lots of new things and they want new sounds. But what I'm curious about is, what do dance floors say outside of the soul clubs? What do people look like when they come to, or what are they looking for from you when you're playing at the Berlin Bar or something, or the liquor rooms? Do you have a group of people who have been with you on your journey for a long time, but are you also trying to get new people to dance? How does it work for you?
I don't think anyone follows me around to hear me play. I'm sure my friends like always check my Facebook, and if they're heading out that night, they'll go,
Yeah,
"Oh, Aoife's playing. Let's pop into her." You know, which I love about Dublin. I would be the same myself. You
yeah,
know, you even notice with the lockdown, I'm missing all those randomers and stuff like that. But no, like I mean, the liquor rooms would have been an older crowd. It probably would be much more mainstream
yeah,
crowd. You know,
yeah,
I get such joy out of them getting what I do.
yeah,
But then like I play in Yukio, which has always been a disco bar.
yeah,
And I'm not really a disco DJ. I'd be much more have much more of a house
yeah,
background.
yeah,
But obviously playing in Yukio influences me as well, you know,
yeah.
so which would be a different crowd. So no matter what I play, I like to adapt to the venue. I can still be myself.
It's it.
Um, yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
yeah, definitely, I think so. I've been doing the hip hop to house for so long now.
yeah,
I know how it works, and
yeah,
I love warming up with hip hop. I just love warming up with hip hop. And moving to house. So
yeah,
like there's some places I go in though. This is a house club. I'm not doing hip hop. I'm not doing any warm up. It's actually harder to get a hip hop set together because the records are so short and they don't make them anymore either. Do you know?
yeah,
Whereas the house records are just coming out all the time. They're
yeah,
longer. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
easier to mix as well.
There's more space to work with as well, isn't there? I think in
Yeah,
that sense.
yeah.
I suppose my question for you then is, a lot of the places we're describing are smaller venues or smallish venues, but you play festivals as well. You play Electric Picnic and Body and Soul. Are there different, not rules, but how do you work with a festival audience? I mean, I'm assuming there could be more people, for example.
Um, Yeah, yeah. I'd still play in small areas in
Right. Yeah.
festivals,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
have played in bigger areas. But I do remember one of the first festivals I had done. It must have been Electric Picnic, you know, that I hadn't played at a festival for a while because there was a time where they weren't that popular, and then all of a sudden they got popular again.
Yeah.
But I always remember being with my best friend, who was basically my friend who I grew up with in the 80s, and we shared records and we still go to gigs. And I remember saying to her, "Oh my God, I'm so nervous. No one's going to get the whole R&B thing. And I'm after bringing tons of R&B records. They're not going to get it." And she says, "Aoife, everyone dances at a festival." Like she said, "You get a tin can and that." And she goes, "They'll just start moving." And she was right.
Yeah.
She was actually right, you know. So um your question is like how different they are. I suppose they're just different because when you're playing, it doesn't make any difference. It's just that you're in a field and you might be colder, and uh, yeah, it's nice to play outdoors. But there was one time that sticks out in my head the most was the Reckless in Love stage, which was like a big massive stage that I played in.
Yeah.
And how nerve-wracking that was, looking out at the crowd.
How big was the crowd?
I don't know. I wouldn't be able to, but there must have been thousands at it. But yeah, it's a memory I'll have for the rest of my life.
I guess those are the moments, though, where you trust yourself. You know you can do it. You've done it before. Otherwise, you wouldn't have got to that stage where you were standing in front of all of those people. So those are the moments where you go back to knowing yourself, understanding your passion, and letting your passion push you through the nerves, because everybody gets nervous. I mean, I DJ very occasionally at the DA Soul Club when no one's dancing, and then you know there's always that horror of the next record is going to be the disastrous one. So, but I mean, you've got an incredible amount of experience, and you have the agility to be able to move through as well and know what's working or judge the movement of the crowd. But I guess there's a different expectation with festival crowds because, as you say, they're there for different reasons.
Yeah. I suppose what I like about festivals is how you get exposed to a hell of a lot more people, you know, that mightn't get to hear you at all. Another thing I love about festivals is that my Dublin friends and my Limerick friends merge. I get them all at the same time, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, going back to the nerve thing as well, like I always get nervous, you know, even if I'm playing in the Beat Lounge or Yukio and that. But I don't want to stop getting nervous, you know. I always find that the outcome of nerves is always good because, you know, you have worked and you know, you are prepared and things like that. But going back to nerves, I don't think anyone realizes how scary Facebook Live is.
I was going to ask you about that now. In fact, because that's because one of the things that's interesting listening to you talk, and it will apply to festivals as well, is we're now in this new world where festivals are going to look different, and so I'm wondering if you're going to have any involvement with new sorts of festivals. But before that, Facebook has suddenly been awash with everybody sharing music. And I've seen you a couple of times. You always look quite calm and nonchalant when you're doing it, but talk to me about the experience.
People said that to me, but I wasn't at all. I felt like pressing record and running out the bloody door. And then if I ran out the door, you'd have nowhere to go because we were all locked in as well.
Yeah. So what made you want to do it? Because I know a lot of people who...
I didn't want to do it.
Oh, okay.
I felt obliged. I just felt obliged to do it. I actually did see these young fellas doing it.
Yeah.
Before lockdown, before COVID, and going, oh my God, that's so scary. Imagine having to put a camera on in your room and have to worry about all the other technical things that you have to do and then put it on Facebook. Like it just, for me, I was just like, that's like doing a boiler room set, you know?
Yeah.
But then when COVID did happen and then all my gigs went, I have to say it was actually Duncan and Lou that own Yukio. They were the ones that actually encouraged me because they were getting their DJs to do it. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to get left out. I have to do this. Like, I'm not going to be one of those DJs that's not going to do it, you know? So it really, like, but the amount of work I put into it, like, you know, and making sure the room was fine. I had to go and get a new phone just even to get like my camera right. And I had to buy an iRig to get the right sound and just finding everything that was like right, you know, including trying to, it wasn't trying to find records to make people dance. It was actually kind of going, oh, okay, I think I'm going back to pirate radio here. Because this is how I played on pirate radio. I was actually looking for my rare old songs that people hadn't heard before. You know, so it was completely different, but absolutely terrifying. Right up till the last, I think I did 6 or 7. I did a good few. And each and every single one of them were absolutely terrifying.
Do you know, it's funny, isn't it? Because also you're doing it effectively in front of the world's fiercest critic, Facebook, because they try and block everything anyway, don't they? And try and...
Well, that was the disappointing thing. Like, I have to say I would still be doing it, only that they just cut me. I think as they say, like, I felt like I spent an awful lot of money on these records. I should be allowed to play them. But apparently, technically, you're only actually allowed to play them for yourself. You're not allowed to play them to an audience. So that's why Facebook can block them, or the record company. Facebook can for the record companies. But when they block them, it's just so soul destroying that you've put so much work into it. You know, like, it really doesn't. Unfortunately, you know, it's a tool that really isn't working anymore. If I think I was very lucky at the beginning. I got away with not getting blocked, but then, like, some algorithm happens. So every time I go live now, it's like, oh, she's up again.
There she is, and there's someone in there. Yeah,
cut her to bits. Cut her. Go on. I know she's worked very hard, but just cut her. You know. So.
But I think you're absolutely right. One of the things that's really interesting is we're discovering the limits of our own platforms, aren't we? Because Facebook is the world's worst place to do anything live, really, and yet people keep trying. I know other people that have tried Twitch or Instagram and all of these other things. I mean, ultimately, we're all hoping there's going to be a point where nobody has to do that anymore, because you will be able to go back out. Now, I can't see anything happening until next year. But in terms of outdoor events, have you got any festivals coming up? Are you going to get any opportunities to play?
Thankfully, yeah. Like, I mean, my diary is empty at the moment, but thankfully I do have one festival coming up at the end of this month. It starts on Friday, the 28th of August, and it goes on for the whole weekend until the 30th. And it's a beautiful festival called Home. It's run by H&G Creation, who I've always loved as promoters anyway. So this is my first time working with them. Yeah. But they're the type of promoters that, obviously, music is very important to them, but the experience is very important to them. So they are kind of thinking outside the box. It's called a micro festival. It's only going to have 100 people. It's in a wedding venue. They're really, really practicing the HSE guidelines, where accommodation, we're all going to be far apart. There's going to be a few indoor venues, but there's only going to be a certain amount of people allowed in, the smaller ones at the same time. You might have to go to another venue, or you might have to go outside. They're doing interesting things like yoga, sourdough bread making, DJ workshops that I'm not doing, but there's a few bands. But I think on the Friday I am the DJ, so I'll actually do a few sets, which is perfect for me. So they will have that R&B experience, and then it goes a bit stubbier, and then, like, by the end of the night it'll be bangers, absolute bangers in the house.
But that's the right. So, by the end of the night, everybody needs a banger, don't they?
Yeah, but as well as that, just going back to the festival thing as well, is that we were a bit saturated. I used to get a bit frustrated with festivals. I was like, oh no, there's another one on. Like, I mean, we can't all have festivals. They're all losing money. Do you know what I mean? And so there's a festival. Everyone has this idea of putting on a festival, and we should really be coming together and putting on one at the same time. And all I know is that I wasn't playing at any of these festivals. So even when the lockdown happened, I was like, oh God, it's such a pity now. Like, none of the festivals are on, and I won't be able to play at festivals this year. And I was like, oh, hang on, I haven't been booked for any festivals anyway. So I wasn't doing Electric Picnic or Body and Soul or any of those ones anyway. Yeah. So I think we'll have to go back to the drawing boards, and maybe something like this might help and change the way festivals have been run in the last few years, because it just seemed like it was a money-making thing, and it was like about being bigger and better and bigger names and stuff like that. Yeah. Where I really do think that Irish artists like me, we need to be playing at those festivals, and we need to be headlining them. We need to be getting seen, we need to be, as me personally, that's how I would say, booking more Irish bands, getting more Irish people involved and stuff like that. So I really like the idea, like going to a festival. I would be excited, but I don't really like preparing to go for an Irish festival because, you know, I'll easily need 2 or 3 bags of records.
Yeah.
You need your warm clothes, you need your rain clothes, you need to look good, you need this, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of preparation. So I'm really excited. I am already, like, even today looking for that Mary J record for you. I was going, oh, that'll do for home now. I want to bring that for home. So thank you for that, Barney.
No, it's my pleasure. But it's
so
interesting.
Yeah, I think I'm hoping that that'll be a new direction. You know what I mean? And it's just like we don't all have to run them. No. Like even if you want to run one, could you not just collaborate with someone else running one and say, I have an idea here, could we just collaborate, you know, bring your people with my people, you know, that kind of way. So
I think one of the things the pandemic has done has made people realize the value of community and of closeness to people. So I think it is an opportunity for people to reimagine, because a lot of these things, as you say, they just become these kind of corporate things, and then it's much too much, and the experience of being there is very impersonal, and it's all this and that. So I like the sound of a smaller festival where people have really thought things through from the perspective not only of the artist like yourself, but also the audience, so that you're not dwarfed at the back of the space, but actually you're central to the experience. I'm going to swing you round from festivals and get you back to asking you about your second record that you've chosen, because I want to carry on after that and learn more about your archiving. So what's the second record you've chosen for me, Aoife?
Okay, it's a soul queen, a house queen. I know with that whole Northern soul and soul scene, you know, our disco scene, I always hear people saying, oh, she should have been huge. She should have been huge. And she was never that good. You know, they talk about that. Well, she should have been huge. This is a diva.
Yeah.
Like, look how fierce she is. Like,
she was huge for about 10 minutes, wasn't she? And then she kind of, which is a real sad thing.
Look at her.
Oh,
yeah. She's proper. She really is proper. A diva is like my Mary J of house.
Yeah.
That's only a fraction of her records that I have. There's loads of them. There was another one I wanted to get for you, you know. I have the Don't Let It Show on Your Face, which I thought would be suitable for your show. But again, she comes from that whole gospel thing. I know very little about her. She's a housewife from New Jersey. She collaborated with Frankie Knuckles a lot. She really was Frankie Knuckles' singer. Like, he produced all her albums and stuff like that. Again, the gospel thing, you know, she loved God, always thanks God on her records, which, you know, a lot of those Americans did back then when we were able. We were like, what? It's talking God, you know. But again, I'd often ask people in New York in the 90s, go, do you know a diva? Do you ever see a diva in the clubs? And they were like, no, honey, a diva is just like, you know, a housewife from New Jersey, and, you know, we don't know who she is. She's just a friend of Frankie's, you know. But Jesus Christ, she's got a voice like an angel, like just the most beautiful voice. But also, again, her style of her vocal style is house. It really is house. Like Mary J is soul, hip hop soul. A diva is my girl, like Mary, and she should have been huge, like Barbara Tucker and India, and there's like all these wonderful house singers. Stephanie Cook, a lot of them were 70, a lot of them did do the soul, they did Town of Houston and all them. They all sang house records as well, you know. They might have been the heroes of some of those producers, like, you know, Masters of Work and that, and they'd ask them to play there. So that would be my second.
I think that there's something very evocative. When you were talking, I was having memories of soaring vocals and spaces where the vocals continue and all of that kind. Part of the sense of community that you used to get in big events where the music would bring everybody together. And a diva is a kind of missing name in some ways now. I mean, it's an interesting choice. I'm glad that you chose it, because what I do with all of the records that people choose is I put them up on a playlist and then share the playlist. And so it's going to give me an opportunity to
Oh,
go back
brilliant.
and
Oh,
listen to
yeah.
all this stuff, because we forget, I think, and I think we forget too soon, the names of men and women who made a major contribution. May have only been to 3 minutes of our life, or it may have been an evening, or it may have been a summer, or a relationship, but those are the names that we forget. And a diva is, you're absolutely right, is one of the
Yeah.
unsung.
Yeah. She
Yeah.
has she has a song which I have, but again I couldn't find it, called It Should Have Been Me. And what I used to love about it was that it started off as like a really slow, soulful R&B record, not
Yeah,
even R&B, just like a soul record.
yeah,
And then it just breaks into house. So to play that as a house DJ, like as in kind of go, okay, let's stop. Let's just start with this beautiful intro. And they're
yeah,
all going, what are you doing? You're changing this whole sound.
yeah.
And then it just breaks into like a proper Frankie Knuckles track, you know. She really is the queen for me, like the house queen. So yeah, I'd love to hear her making records again. Maybe
Mm,
she is. I
mm,
don't know. You know,
mm.
there's I've been Googling her for like the last decade, going,
Yeah,
what the hell? And when Frankie Knuckles died as well, I was like, what about a diva? What
yeah,
about a diva? Where's a diva? I'm
yeah.
sure she's doing PAs in Philadelphia or New Jersey or somewhere like that, but it's not someone we hear about, and I'd love to hear from her.
It's funny, isn't it? I mean, going back to something that you were describing, and the way you talk is sending me back in time to the late 80s, early 90s. One of the things that house taught a lot of people was how music works, how you can have a build up and then everything comes down, and when you're dancing you're glad of the rest, and then certain elements start coming back in and everybody knows that you're going to have to start going again. So
Yeah,
I always, it's funny because the other thing is that I grew up in the town where men didn't dance. So it was kind of, suddenly you had all of these men who I knew, or young men, and we all knew when to stop and when to move. And we were kind of educated in some ways by DJs and by house music. It taught us about the value of a pause or an introduction or those kind of things.
yeah.
So when you're describing it, I'm just sitting, oh my God, I'm a young
Yeah,
man again.
as a DJ, I'm teasing you. I'm
Yeah.
absolutely teasing you, you know. So it's like, where is this going? Don't tell me she's just going to play a soul record in the middle of this set, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's beautiful. Now I'm going to keep this going because I want to ask you about your archivist approach
Sure.
as well, because you made a film, did you, in 2012?
I made an audio documentary
Perfect. Yeah.
with Near FM. I don't know if you know the community radio out in northeast Dublin.
Okay.
I've been with them on and off for since 2005, 2006.
Right. Yeah.
And oh god, they've given me the best training. Yeah, folklore from the dance floor was, I had been working as an assistant, you know, producer for some of the Near FM documentaries.
Yeah.
And you know, they said, if you ever have any ideas, you know, let me know. And then I thought, of God, I could do one on, sorry, excuse me, I was doing a radio program a bit like what you're doing now, you know, where
Right.
you're just interviewing your community.
Yeah.
And that was back from 2006 up until around 2013.
Wow.
And so I collected a lot of interviews. It was a terrible time because it was like the start of Celtic Tiger, or was the end of Celtic Tiger, and then the beginning of the recession.
Yeah.
It was I know from making folklore that it was a very lull time for dance music.
Yeah.
In general, I don't even think it was in Ireland. But there were a lot of people in Dublin that had got Ableton, and they
Yeah.
had MySpace as well.
Yeah.
So the internet. So as much as our dance scene wasn't that great, but there was a lot of things going on behind the scenes. So I
Yeah.
managed to interview and just get exposed to a lot of music that was being made. Unfortunately, it was never made on vinyl, so I never really played any of that Irish music out. It was very much more techno. There was some house music too, but there was a lot of techno. that program was called Club Ceol. Ceol is the Irish for music. So through that then, and through Near FM, that inspired me to make Folklore from the Dance Floor.
It's a great title.
Yeah, it took a while for that to come, but it eventually came. And I remember I remember Near FM said to me, because Near FM is community radio and it's only Northeast Dublin, and they were saying, okay, I don't think you should do the whole country, because like if you do the whole country, like it's going to be an awful lot of work, and it doesn't really represent what Near FM are.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, you're right. It'll just be so much easier if I do Dublin, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember going to a guy called Paul Tarpey in Limerick, he'd be his own archivist and club historian and music historian here in Ireland, and Tony Walsh, who again would be an old DJ friend of mine, who used to give me these disco records and go, she should have been huge, Aoife, she should have been huge. So, and both Paul and Tony are still in the process of writing books. So they were the two guys that I just really looked for advice. And Paul Tarpey just ate me and went, you're from Limerick, Aoife, how the hell can you just do a documentary on Dublin only?
Yeah.
And I was like, God, yeah, you're absolutely right. Sure, there's no better woman that could do it, because, you know, I have these Limerick roots, and I used to go to Galway and Cork. And then as a DJ, I used to go to Belfast and Waterford and Sligo and all these interesting places. So I said, no, you're right. And Tony, of course, Tony Walsh from the Horny Organ Tribe, who I'd started DJing with, he'd also said, no, Aoife, you have to cover the country. And that's so I went back to Near FM, and they said, yeah, absolutely, we'll apply for funding for this, but you won't get it. You won't get it first time. It was very last minute, and I got it.
Congratulations.
And it took me, I think I was given 2 years to make it, and I think it took about 4 years. It was blood, sweat and tears. I remember like collecting all the interviews, going, okay, I've covered the punks, I've covered the mods, I've covered the hip hop, I've done the drum and bass, I've done the techno, I've done the house, you know what I mean? I've done the ravers.
Yeah.
And then I was like, how the hell am I going to put this shit together? Where do I begin with all these? Because I went around collecting recordings for ages.
Yeah.
Then I started putting it together and editing it, and then I was like, oh my God, I need to get music for this. And I was like, it's going to have to be Irish music, which was interesting too. Like, you know, I hear Oisin Lunny being mentioned in on your program a lot. Like, but you know, I was like, oh, there's Marksman records, and oh, here's a record that was made here. Oh, look, there's a Sinead O'Connor record here that I have. There's a drum and bass mix of this, and there was this amazing music coming out of Ireland too at that time when I was making it. So I managed to do it, and I put it out on community radio. And sometimes, you know the community radio days for me, comparison to the pirate music days for me, which was like a decade and a half beforehand, less people listen. But I have to say that Folklore is 2012, so it's nearly 10 years old now, and it does sound very dated, you know, and it's definitely of its time.
Yeah.
But it has legs. It's something that has always followed with me. I always get asked to talk, you know, about club history, and I actually do know it very well, just because I did an awful lot of research on it. You know, I did learn a lot from, like, I've interviewed so many people, so I have their story, including mine. So even sometimes if I'm referencing, it's because I actually know it quite well from interviewing these people and getting their side of the story. So it's something that I'm so glad I did. It's preserved now, you know, and it's there. It was recorded in those times, you know, so you can't, even if you do one now, you know, you hear people talking about the internet, and you talking about closing the record shops, and you know, it's you can definitely hear the time of it, you know. But after Folklore, a good few years after Folklore, Near FM asked me to do an archiving project that they were doing. They had a 2-year archiving project on their morning magazine program, which I had presented a bit before anyway, and it was a program I was very familiar with.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize, but it takes 7 years to become an archivist. And we were just blessed in Near FM because they own archive.ie, and they had started archiving very early. And then we were working closely with the Dublin digital response.
Yeah.
So I did that for 2 years, but it's definitely, you know, I've done a lot of radio over the years, but archiving is definitely something I'd like to keep doing. And I'm hoping now to start archiving my Club Ceol. Very, like, I think the Club Ceol, like, I think that the interviews done for Folklore from the Dance Floor were for that documentary.
Yeah.
But I think with Club Ceol, like, I think I'm going to have some really rare and special interviews there that really, really do need to be preserved properly. So that's where that all came from, you know. And
it's very close to my heart. Documentary, archiving, oral history, these kind of things, I think is absolutely essential. When you were talking about Folklore from the Dance Floor, I was imagining it as a creative documentary where you are going to speak to people. You are in, when you were describing what the kitchen was but is now not, to me, I see that as a montage in a documentary with a voiceover, and then perhaps photos or archive footage from the period. Because what you're describing to me is a further kind of expression of your innate passion for all of this, and your love of everything to do with club and soul and house and music, your chosen profession. And I could really see you walking down the street saying, come with me now, we're going to find where so-and-so first played. It would make an amazing documentary. You just need to write the script.
I already did it. It's out there.
Well, absolutely.
I do think though that you know, everything, I was very lucky to get into radio, and I think I was even more blessed to get into community radio, you know, like, because they're there to help you. I was a severely dyslexic child. I had no inter or leaving or anything like that. And community radio gave me the training and the experience, and they had the patience with me, you know. But so I was very lucky to get into that. And even when they asked me to do the archiving project, I did a lot of good radio projects with them, you know. There was I did a few more documentaries in my native language about local schools and stuff like that. But that everything I do is for my DJ career, though. Do you know what I mean? My first love is playing records. You know, people say, oh, you should do online DJ courses. You should do this. You should do this. Like, nah, I want to play records. I just want to go out and play records. That's my dream job. It's the best job ever. Why would I want to go and do you know what I mean? So everything, like including folklore, including archiving, like if I want to do archiving, I want it to be I want to preserve our culture, our community, our music community here in Ireland. So but it's all about it's the DJing comes first, even before radio. DJing comes first.
Oh no, I can see that. I can see that when you smile as you talk about these things as well. And I think it's very inspiring to hear you so committed to something. And of course, I can fully understand what you're describing. But it is interesting though, isn't it? Because this kind of thing is more than one thing, isn't it? You have this love, you've had this opportunity to develop a lot of really important skills and personal development in terms of confidence and trusting yourself and allowing a passion to guide you through life and all of these kind of things. So it's really interesting to hear you talking about where you are with this today. And this is why I was so happy when you agreed to come on the show. I'm going to ask you, just because I'm conscious that we've been talking for a long time and I don't want to overstay my virtual welcome in your record room. But what's the third record you've chosen for us, Aoife?
I chose a Dublin. So he's my Dublin soul boy anyway. And again, going back to the Jazz FM
Yeah.
days, which was pirate radio days. I met a young guy called Steve Downs. I
Okay.
don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he lives down the road. So that's why I always call him. He's an Irish soul boy. He lives down the road. In Jazz FM, he was quite young, and he used to give me CDs, and
Yeah.
he played drums, guitar. He was a multi-instrumentalist.
Yeah.
And he was making soul music, and there was nobody, like, he had a band called New Root Rhythm.
Right.
And he'd be giving me these CDs, and I was like, oh my God, this is the music I play. This is the Urban Soul Show. Like, I have, this is, and no one in Ireland at the time was making music like that. And he kind of struggled in Ireland a lot. He made albums, he made a lot of soul albums, made tons and tons of songs.
Yeah.
And then he just moved to Amsterdam, and he became huge. He's really big. He's a really big vocalist in the house scene now.
Fabulous.
And he had a big song with a band called Lovebirds from Berlin. Well, it's a guy from Berlin.
Yeah.
And it's called "I Want You for My Soul," and it's a huge Dublin anthem. But like, my friend even told me that she was at a festival in the UK and they played that song, and she was going, he's from Dublin. And they were like, is he not a black guy? So again, I remember, like, Steve had this kind of very black soulful voice.
Yeah.
The first time, that first Stereo MCs album that came out, I don't know what the album's called, but the song was called "I'm a Believer."
Right.
And I used to listen to this, like, album on repeat. And then I think when Connected came out, and I saw Your Man, and I was like, oh my God, it's a skinny white guy. I couldn't believe Your Man wasn't a black guy,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's a bit like that with Steve, but obviously I knew him. The song "I Want You for My Soul" was released, and then I think it actually just got missed out on, and it became one of these classic songs. But like, us Irish house DJs, we all want a copy of that record. Like, it's like 200 quid on Discogs, and we cannot get our hands on this.
Wow.
I asked Steve, could he get me a copy, and he said, like, if he, like, because I'm a vinyl DJ, I know he would have tried to get me a copy if he could.
Yeah.
And he just said, Aoife, I don't even have my own copy, but it will be released again. I also managed to get, like, he plays in the Beat Lounge if he's free.
Yeah.
And he's a DJ too, of course he is.
Yeah.
But he'll have a mic, and he'll go and he'll sing that song "I Want You for My Soul," and everyone's going, oh, is that your friend? He's like, and it's like, is he an Irish guy that sings that song? And I'm like, yeah, this is our song. This is our Dublin anthem,
Yeah.
So recently it was reissued, and I know we've had conversations about reissues and vinyl collecting and stuff. It was reissued.
Yeah.
And it did come out, and it was like, hey, "I Want You for My Soul" is every DJ, every house DJ I know is like, and we were only allowed to get one copy. The way sometimes they only let you have one copy,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do have the reissue of "I Want You for My Soul," and actually Lovebirds with Steve Downs have another record out at it's just released today, because I saw he put it up on Facebook.
Yeah.
But the last time he DJ'd with me, he gave me a record by Audio, and here it says here "Tunnel Vision" featuring Steve Downs.
Oh, look at that.
So he's on, like, I have so many records, and I'm going, and it says featuring Steve Downs. So he's a really good house vocalist. He's a soul guy. He lives down the road on the north side. I could have picked out a million records here, like Jade and the Lady Boy featuring Steve Downs. So I picked it, and this is the reissue. I did get my copy, and I know it's not the same as the original, but it had to be done.
But the story is amazing. I love the story. It's as much about the story, and also because we're not sitting here pretending that the original doesn't exist and it's, oh, listen to my MP3. That's the beauty of it, isn't it? That some of these objects, these small physical things, become legendary in terms of their unavailability.
And because he's a friend, and he's an old friend, like it was great to see the downloads. Like if I went to a club lately in the last few years, even the lads in Limerick know this song now, and it was a big Dublin song.
Yeah.
But like that it was available on download, so it got played. Like my friend at the festival, she was like, he's from Dublin, you know, no one really knows that, you know, but he's quite a well-known soul singer in the house scene. And he does do down-tempo stuff too, as well, you know. And that the first album he ever made was more like a hip-hop R&B record. But I'm so happy for him. Like, I'm so happy that like he had that one big track. Like he has tons and tons of other records, and he's amazing collaborations, you know. And it's great. Like, I love the fact that he comes down to the Beatle Lounge and he goes, "Oh, Aoife, have you got a mic? And I'll sing some songs." And everyone was like, "What? Is that your man that sings that song?" You know. So I just thought, you know, it's a soul, you know, you asked me for a soul record, and I went, well, why not an Irish soul person, an Irish soul boy, I suppose.
Listen,
he's a lot younger as well. Like in Jazz FM, I don't know what age I was young anyway, but I was probably, you know, in my mid-20s, and he must have still been a teenager, you know. So and he's always been there, and he's always been doing stuff, you know. So that was my third choice.
Do you know, those are the kind of stories that make this show what it is, where I ask a simple question, which is choose an object, and then I get the real privilege to be part, or to hear part of someone's journey, their story. It gives me insight into you know, community relationships and all of these things, simply from asking you to choose an object. Aoife, do you know, I'm going to think, or I do think actually, that this is a great place to end the episode, because it's been so interesting chatting to you. I know in many ways we've only just scratched the surface, but all I can say is your passion for all of this, and your kind of your dedication to your craft. It's so inspiring. Aoife, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, and I really enjoyed your other interviews, and keep up with the good work.
Well, look, thank you very much.
And see you on the dance floor soon, I hope.
I really hope so.